Hi, my name is Beth and I'm the sewing pattern designer and blogger at Sew DIY. In today's video, I'm going to talk about selecting your size for the Dana Jumpsuit pattern. So I'm going to go over how to measure yourself, and then we'll take a look at the size chart and go through an example size and talk over the things that you'll want to consider when you're selecting your size. Make sure to also check out the blog post because I'm going to have more details and kind of diagrams and formulas that you'll need to help you determine some of these calculations. It's a little bit challenging to do math when you're just talking and watching a video, so I find it really helpful to also have a written format that you can refer to and use while you're selecting your size. Let's get started. All right, now I'm going to show you how to measure yourself to determine what size you should sew. So you will need a flexible measuring tape, and then you should wear close-fitting clothing or just your underwear. Just your underwear is even more ideal. And wear the bra that you plan on wearing when you wear your jumpsuit, because bras can kind of change your shape a little bit. So wear that bra, just your underwear, and then let's start measuring. All right, first we want to do our upper bust. So you bring the tape measure over the top of the bust and write this number down, and then you want to measure your full bust and write this number down. So the difference between these two measurements will tell you what cup size you are. And this is not the cup size that you have when you're buying a bra in a store. This is more your sewing cup size. So if the difference between these two measurements is 3 inches, then you're a C cup, 2 inches, you're a B cup, 4 inches, D cup, 5 inches, double D. That's kind of how it works. So this pattern is drafted for a C cup. So for example, if your full bust is 38 and your upper bust is 35, then you're a C cup. If you are a D cup or higher, then you may want to make a full bust adjustment. If you're a D cup, you can probably get away with not making a full bust adjustment, but if you are double D or higher, then I do recommend making one. And if you're a B cup or an A cup, you may want to make a small bust adjustment. All right, let's continue with our measurements. Next, you want to measure your waist and make a note of this. And then measure your hips at the fullest part. Next, let's talk about length. So this pattern is designed for a height of 5'10". So if you're shorter, you may need to shorten the length of the pattern in the bodice, in the rise, or in the pant. But even if you're 5'10", you might need to shorten it because everyone has a different proportion of torso to leg and, shoulder to waist and waist to crotch. So it all varies a lot, and this is a great opportunity for you to get to know your body better and where you carry your length. So I recommend measuring your torso, and the way you do this is you put the measuring tape between your legs and over one shoulder, and then you want to stand up straight. And if you're shorter than me, your tape measure might work. All right, this is awkward. Oh my gosh. So I have a second tape measure. I'm 5'11", and I have kind of a long torso. So I need to add a little bit more. So this is like the most awkward measurement I could do, but you want to measure yourself really standing at your full height. Don't hunch over when you're doing this. Measure at your full height. If you're tall like me, you might need to get out a second measuring tape, or maybe you have a longer tape measure. Hopefully they make them. I've just been using this same one for years. So make a note of your torso. The pattern instructions have a line for the finished measurements of the torso, and I recommend about 3 inches of ease, because when you sit down or when you bend over, your body will often like lengthen a little bit and it'll put more pressure on it. And if your jumpsuit's too short, it's going to put pressure on the crotch and pull, and it's just uncomfortable. So we don't want that. Okay, so now that you've taken all your measurements, it's time to go look at the size chart and find the size or sizes that will work best for your body. Now that you have your measurements, go ahead and open the Dana Jumpsuit instructions PDF in Acrobat Reader. And when you go to page 3, you're going to see a bunch of charts with a lot of numbers, and it might feel a little bit overwhelming, but don't worry, I'm going to show you everything that's in here right now. So the first section is body measurements. So this is how the size chart is set up, the sizes that correlate with the different body measurements. And don't worry if you are in multiple sizes, that's very, very common. So in the first row, we have the upper bust and then bust, waist, and hip. And the way that these numbers are done, inches are on the top and then centimeters are in parentheses below. The next chart we have is finished garment measurements. And so here, this tells you how big the jumpsuit is going to be after you sew it. So for example, the bust measurement of the size 0 is going to be 36.5 inches in circumference. And to make everything a little bit easier on you, down here below the finished garment measurements chart, I've told you what the garment ease is for the bust, waist, and hips. So that'll give you a good reference point for the different sizes. So what I like to do when I'm selecting a size is go into the PDF and highlight my measurements. So I've made up a size that we're going to use as an example here. So you just go and you highlight the size and then click this little button and it acts like a digital highlight, and you can actually save this and reference it for future use. I really love this feature. So we'll do upper bust 43, bust 48, waist 42, and hips 50. So now we have our size and we can see that we're across a few different sizes. So now we want to go and look at the finished garment measurements and see how those compare. So because there's kind of a generous ease in this pattern, you may be able to sew a smaller size. And it really just depends what kind of ease you're comfortable with. So if we look here, the size 24 has a finished waist of 47 inches and finished hip of 56 inches. So with our body measurements, that would give us 5 inches of ease at the waist and 6 inches of ease at the hips. So that would probably be okay. If you're okay with less ease, you could probably sew the size 22 and have 4 inches of ease at the hips and 3 inches of ease at the waist. Now for our bust, we have a bust of 48 inches and an upper bust of 43 inches. So this indicates that we have a sewing cup size of double D because there's a 5-inch difference between our upper bust and bust. So if the difference between your upper bust and bust is more than 5 inches, I recommend doing a full bust adjustment. So we will want to cut out our size 20 and then do a 1-inch full bust adjustment. And I will put in some diagrams and more helpful information in the blog post to show you how to do a full bust adjustment and how to determine how much of a full bust adjustment you want. So a few other things that you'll want to look at are the bicep measurement, and this row gives you the finished garment measurement for that. And I would recommend at least a 1-inch ease in the bicep. The other thing you want to think about is the torso. So for example, let's say that we have a torso of 75 inches and this size 22 finished measurement will give us a 75.5 inch torso measurement. But if our torso is 75 inches, then we want the finished measurement to be 78 inches. which means that we need an additional 2.5 inches added. So just to be a little bit complicated, but hopefully it's not, I will add some more details in the blog post. If we want to add 2.5 inches to the torso, then we would actually add 1.25 inches to our bodice and crotch depth, because we're going to be adding it on the front and the back, and the torso is a measurement of the circumference around the front and the back. So again, look at the details in the blog post. That will help you determine how much you need to lengthen or shorten your torso measurement. So after you get all this figured out, you can print your pattern and make a muslin. Well, I hope that you found that video helpful. If you haven't gotten the Dana Jumpsuit pattern yet, I will put a link down below. And if you're looking for a little bit more help sewing this intermediate level pattern, I have a sew along video e-course that you can purchase. This video e-course goes through all the steps of making the Dana jumpsuit, and it gives you a lot of helpful tips along the way. I'm going to explain exactly why things need to happen a certain way and the way that I recommend doing things so that you get a really successful, awesome jumpsuit at the end. I'll also put a link to that down in the show notes, so make sure to check both of those out. And thanks for being here. Happy sewing!